What if all the ice at the North and South Poles melted? Not over hundreds of years, but all at once, in a single, catastrophic moment. This would be one of the most destructive events in the history of our planet. Right now, the polar ice caps store enormous amounts of frozen water. If all that ice melted instantly, the first and most obvious effect would be a massive rise in sea levels. We're not talking about a few inches. We're talking about more than 60 meters, or 200 feet. That means huge parts of the world as we know it would simply disappear underwater. Think about the world's greatest cities: New York, Miami, London, Tokyo, Shanghai, Sydney. All of them would be partially or completely submerged. Entire island nations in the Pacific and the Caribbean would vanish from the map. Billions of people would be displaced, losing their homes and livelihoods in an instant. This would trigger the largest and most chaotic mass migration humanity has ever seen. Countries would be overwhelmed with refugees. Borders would tighten, and conflicts over land and resources would explode. But the flooding is only where the nightmare begins. All that cold, fresh water pouring into the oceans would disrupt the delicate balance of our global climate system. Ocean currents, like the Atlantic Meridional, overturning circulation, which act like the planet's conveyor belt for heat, would slow down or even stop. This would throw global weather patterns into chaos. Europe could plunge into a mini ice age, with brutally long winters and short, cool summers. Meanwhile, other parts of the world would bake under extreme, unrelenting heat waves, making some regions completely unlivable. Rainfall patterns would shift dramatically. Some areas would face devastating droughts, while others would be hit by constant, biblical floods. Agriculture would collapse. Farmers rely on predictable seasons to grow crops, but with seasons becoming a chaotic mess, food production would plummet. This would lead to widespread famine, and the poorest nations would suffer the most. And what about the animals? Polar bears, seals, and penguins depend on the ice for their very survival. Without it, they would face rapid extinction. But the devastation wouldn't stop at the poles. The warmer oceans would kill off coral reefs, causing fish populations to crash and breaking the entire marine food chain. Millions of people who rely on the ocean for food would be left with nothing. There's another, even more terrifying threat hidden beneath the ice. For thousands of years, the permafrost has trapped immense amounts of greenhouse gases, especially methane. As the ice melts, all that gas would be released into the atmosphere. Methane is a superpotent greenhouse gas, trapping far more heat than carbon dioxide. This would kick off a terrifying feedback loop. More heat causes more ice to melt, which releases more gas, which creates even more heat. It's a runaway train that would be nearly impossible to stop. Our weather would become more violent than ever before. Warmer oceans fuel stronger storms. Hurricanes and typhoons would become supercharged, unleashing unprecedented destruction on coastal areas. Our modern infrastructure power grids, roads, communication networks wasn't built to withstand such constant extremes. Widespread failures would become the new normal. Society would begin to break down. Heat waves would cause mass casualties. Flooding would spread diseases. Governments would be overwhelmed and unable to respond. While some wealthy nations might try to adapt by building seawalls or relocating cities, not everyone would have that luxury. Global inequality would soar, and some nations would simply collapse. Over time, the planet would eventually find a new, harsh equilibrium. New coastlines would form. Life would go on, but it would be a very different and much tougher world. Human civilization would survive, but it would be a shadow of its former self, forever scarred by the Great Melt. The world we know today would be gone. This is why protecting our polar ice is not just an environmental issue. It's about protecting the stability of our planet and the future of humanity. Thanks for watching.